Well, good morning. I'm Nancy Mackey, and you're with us at the Open Gate Beyond the Spotlight. This is our fun series where we get to highlight and shine the light on many of the extraordinary people we have the opportunity to know and who are making a difference every day in the lives of their clients and the people they serve. It's really the stories of that gritty real world leadership. And joining me today is Nick Martin, managing partner for Workshop Bank. And Nick, you help organizations as you deliver workshops for leadership teams. And at the same time, you support other coaches and facilitators by providing your wonderful content and expertise. So I'm really glad you could join us today. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And Nick, I invited you because I was super intrigued by your background. And it has some curious contrasts as we got to know each other. Your initial education, as I understand it, was in chemical engineering, mathematics, and biology. And yet today your work has evolved to the point where you're really transforming people and utilizing all those relationship building talents and um, skills to make teams effective. So I'd just love to start if you want to share a few highlights from your journey, maybe what shaped and focused your interest in chemistry and mathematics, and how did you evolve to team and leader development? So I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah, well, okay, thank you. I mean, I think like most people, it's just one coincidence after another that I ended up in the position I am. But as you said, my background was in, well, my schooling, my education was in science. And that's I've always been gravitated towards subjects where you're either right or you're wrong. And there was always an answer. And if I could understand the process of getting there, then I would normally get to the right answer. And so that was where my education took me. But when I left university, I didn't really stay with it for much longer. I got straight into IT and software and website development. It was around the year 2000 when I came out of university and took on a variety of roles in dot coms as it was then, mainly leading test manager groups and project manager teams. So I was a young leader myself, and then I was offered a position, really really interesting position in a program that was happening in the UK at the time, where a group of half of them were ex-head teachers from across the UK, and another half were ex consultants from PwC, KPMG. And it was a really interesting public-private partnership where we were tasked with teaching all the schools right across the UK. I think it's something like 20,000 schools, how to manage change better in their
Hmm.
organizations.
Interesting.
Um, Really, yeah. So I was part
Hmm.
of the relationship management team at the time. So I was working directly with local authorities and head teachers by definition to roll out these skills. So
Hmm.
we had a whole bunch of workshop processes that we would teach head teachers how to run with their organization, with the other teachers in their group. With the dynamic they're looking to try and get to, where instead of the head teacher coming up with all the ideas to fix whatever's going on in the school, they would instead run workshops to engage their staff, get them to come up with the ideas themselves, and
Hmm.
therefore be much more likely that when rolled out, that change would stick, whatever that change
Hmm.
would be. So the processes are always very generic. They could work with any team in any type of organization, actually. And that's when I really got into team development. I saw and I felt the power of workshops. I was involved in those workshops. I was there
Hmm.
teaching them the tools. I
Hmm.
would run them in simulations with them,
Hmm.
and it was a fascinating learning experience, going from a
Yeah.
kind of scientific world to a people world where
Yeah.
people had to get stuff done.
Yeah. Did you find that there was some of that scientific element that you were applying as you were in the people world? I mean, Was that
Yeah, a little
exciting
bit.
to
I
you?
get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the kind of the processes you go through, the step-by-step processes you go through is a lot like an
Hmm.
experiment, a biology or a chemistry experiment. You would
Yeah.
start off with a hypothesis,
Right.
and then you would go through a process to try and prove that hypothesis and reach conclusions at the end. Except maybe you don't start off necessarily with such a stringent hypothesis in a
Hmm.
team development workshop. You might have
Hmm.
an objective you always have objectives you're looking to achieve,
Right.
but you don't necessarily know what those objectives, what the end solution is going to look like. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of similarities actually, process wise. So that's why I've always
Right.
stuck to the process side of
Yeah.
workshop delivery, developing processes. And yeah, so maybe that, yeah, now thinking about it,
Yeah.
maybe that's that
That
does lean
might have
quite
something
heavily
to
on
do
the
with it.
side.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny, sometimes I'm a little envious of the folks that are in the more analytical type world, right? Folks that are working with numbers, because oftentimes you get a clear indicator of success at the end, like the
Yeah,
balance sheet balanced, right? And it's like, okay,
yeah,
I got through that project, it's done. And a lot of times when
yeah,
you do work with people, it's the outcomes are not as clear. What fueled you when you
yeah,
started
true.
doing those workshops and with people? What was it that got you excited as an outcome?
um part just not knowing where it would
Mm,
go to.
yeah.
Part chasing those amazing aha moments that would, not
Mhm.
happen in every workshop for sure.
Right.
But when they happened, they were, they, they could be incredible. People could get so emotional when something get
Yeah.
got unlocked for them personally
Yeah.
and as a team. I did a lot of multi-agency work where
Mhm.
teams teams from across the public sector in the UK were coming together, and traditionally they didn't hate each other, but they didn't have a lot of respect for each other. They didn't
Mhm.
share information with each other, because and they just didn't work well with each other. And when we got to the points where um, you could see in their eyes, wow, these people that are sitting across from me aren't so bad, and actually, we all have a common agenda here. We all have a common objective we're looking to achieve for, young people or sick
Right.
people or whatever it was. It was an amazingly valuable
Mhm.
moment to go through as a facilitator, to know that, I was a part of unlocking that. I wasn't the main part. I just brought the process. That's,
Right.
they were the stars, always the stars.
Right.
But just to have a part in that journey was, it was incredibly incredibly fascinating for me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No, I think you
you just chase the next hit.
mhm. I think right? Almost like a bit of a drug for us. It's,
Yeah,
'cause what you said about the aha moments really resonated with me. I think that's when I'm, working with groups when or individuals even, when you suddenly see that moment of, "Oh, yeah, this makes sense," or that changed perception, it's just really gratifying for me. And,
yeah,
because, oftentimes that change in how someone is thinking is what maybe gets them to that better place. So, that really, really stuck
definitely.
with
And
me
you
too.
also know, and you also know that it's very difficult to do that, to change someone's perspective on
Yes.
things and to make that stick is
Hmm.
extremely difficult. People are very entrenched. People are very
Yes.
in their own world, in their own bubble, and they essentially every human being is pretty selfish. They only really care
Yes,
about
I agree.
themselves.
That's right.
So if you can get them to change that,
Hmm.
then wow, it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's a pretty
I
big
think
moment.
you hit the $1 million problem that we're all trying to solve. That's right. We're basically self-interest is first. So, yeah, it's hard to get past
Yeah,
that. Right. Well, so I wanted to drill down a little bit on the leadership competency. So in my work, I try to drill it down to specific competencies, which helps us um, kind of identify things in a real behavioral way. And so we've been focusing on this one called understanding others. So I wanted to give a definition before our next section of the conversation. But understanding others, the way it's defined would be, you're really skilled at understanding why people and groups do what they do. So understanding that underlying motivation And folks really skilled in this competency also are able to pick up on intentions, needs, positions, values, and motivational prompts. And not an easy
Mm.
thing to do, right? Because none of us was gifted with the ability to be mind readers. So it's how do we figure out that kind of thing? So, how does that particular competency and in the way I defined it really factor into the amazing work you're doing with clients today as you lead teams and help teams solve problems?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's core to it. Without the whole point of a workshop is to help to give people the space to understand themselves and to understand the other people that are in the room with them.
Hmm.
And my role as a workshop designer or a facilitator or a consultant or whatever hat I happen to be have on any given day is about opening that space and allowing those people the room and the foresight to be able to dig into what they themselves are understanding about themselves and also what they understand about others. Yeah, I've never really been I've done I used to in my early days I used to do a bit of work in the training world where, you know, I was the subject matter expert and I was teaching people about a topic, and I know I was never comfortable um, taking on that role because I just didn't feel like I was ever, well, who am I to be coming into this room teach you about something? And
Hmm.
I loved the ability to be able to have people in the room teaching each other whatever it
Hmm.
is, whatever the topic was. So I think that's part of understanding, helping people
Yeah.
understand each other,
Yeah.
and yeah, creating those processes to be able to do that
Hmm.
is really core to any good workshop. I think whenever the
Yeah.
facilitator becomes the star, as I alluded to earlier, they become
Hmm.
the kind of center point. I think you're doing your job a disservice because you shouldn't be
Yeah.
talking as nearly as much as they are.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. And it's funny as you say that, Nick, I was thinking back to, I think, one of our first conversations together where we were just sharing, shooting the breeze about our work as facilitators and the distinction between someone who's a trainer or subject matter expert versus a
Mm.
facilitator. And the facilitator role, it is a very unique skill set. And I think requires a lot of patience and discipline, as you said. I like how you point out you don't want to become the star or the center of attention, and sometimes it takes a little work to kind of be
Yeah,
disciplined enough to stay back. Have you found that to be true?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I am an introvert by
Mhm.
by nature that
Me
pretends to
too.
be an extrovert when I really need to, but I don't really enjoy doing that role. But I definitely
Mhm.
found that being relatively introverted um, really helps in this
Mhm.
situation because I much prefer to be in the position where I ask an interesting question, I find an interesting question, I ask the question,
Mhm.
and then I listen to what others are
Mhm.
doing or saying as a result of that question. And because I'm listening and I'm not talking,
Right.
I'm playing into my comfort zone by being because I'm an introvert. So
Right.
anyone who has introverted tendencies, I think, would really benefit from
Mhm.
learning how to facilitate
Mm.
and yeah and getting good at the skill.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and I totally relate as an introvert myself. So I get that. I get exactly what you said resonates with me too. And so I'm curious too, because I think about almost every leader I know is completely overloaded and overwhelmed and rarely even has time to think, right? And that you've got so many tasks on your plate. It's like I got to get to the next task, get to the next task. And taking time to understand my team, I think for a lot of folks seems like an um, it takes some conscious effort. So, what would you say to a leader like that, or what makes you motivated to take the time and or expend the energy to understand other people?
Well, overloaded leaders are one of my um, one of my most popular clients, actually.
Hmm.
I pitch. I most leaders don't do workshops. They don't run workshops themselves. They're much more comfortable sitting around a round table and doing all the talking, making all the decisions. And that is quite stressful. It can quite quickly overload you if you're the one,
Yes.
if you're under the pressure to come up with all the ideas yourself. So I pitch workshops as a way of them freeing up their time. The more, if they're able to, if they have a team or teams below them, and if they're able to just pass problems down to those teams, knowing that those teams will then go away, run workshops on those problems, come up with solutions without me being in the room or without that leader being in the room, you're essentially freeing up time. You're not having to think about the problem yourself, and you're not having to put time into solving those, putting the solutions together. So uh, be, creating a culture where workshops are commonplace, not meetings, but workshops are commonplace, where leaders don't necessarily have to be in the room to to create new ways of working or new ways forward, is a way of freeing up their time.
Hmm.
So that's one of the key tenets to all this. When I'm discussing with busy leaders, all leaders are extremely busy all of the time. This is
Right.
this way of working is going to give them back more time.
Hmm. Well, I love what you said too about making it a culture, right? Where workshops aren't just this thing that we do once a year where we go do a 3-day retreat or something. It sounds like you've helped clients see the value of this as just a regular part of our way of doing things. And yeah, that's a really the culture, I think, is that's a great shift.
Absolutely. And it makes meetings more fun. If every
Hmm.
time you're stepping into a meeting, you're
Hmm.
actually going to be doing some kind of an experiential workshop process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're not just sitting around a table listening to one person speak,
Right.
everyone's getting to input, all of the ideas are out on the table, everyone
Right.
feels like they're heard, they've contributed, and everyone's got their fingerprints in whatever the final
Hmm.
objective is.
Yes.
So it's much more fun, and you
Hmm.
spend a lot less time reviewing decisions later on down the line as well,
Right.
because the right decisions are made in a much shorter, much more concentrated period of time.
Yes. Yes, decisions they probably will sustain, as you said, because they're the right decision or the best decision. So
Yeah,
therefore it'll sustain. We don't have to correct course because we made a hasty decision based on one person's input or
absolutely.
something. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I love what you
absolutely.
said too, Nick, about the process, right? And I think that workshop process creates a lot of or can create safety, a sense of safety for people because there's that, okay, I know what to expect. And maybe for the folks that are a little more prefer structure and analysis, you provide that as well. Do you find that to be true in your
Yeah,
workshops?
I definitely think so. I think they appeal to all types of people. Maybe the people who are used to having the limelight for the majority of the meeting
Mhm.
and doing all the talking and making all the decisions, maybe it doesn't appeal to them so much. Um,
Right.
but
What?
to the
I
to
don't
the
get
other
the spotlight.
95% of the people, exactly.
Right.
But to the other 95% of the people in the meeting, they love it, and
Yes.
that's a win when you're talking about 20
Yes.
people.
Yes. Well, and I think you and I talked before about how that facilitation skill is a it's not a necessarily an intuitive natural thing for a lot of people. And then also that ability to read and understand people, that's not intuitive for a lot of folks. And that's something I find myself helping people in one-on-one work. And so,
Yeah.
what advice might you share or have to share with someone who wants to become more skilled at being able to read other people and understand motivations?
Um, I think it comes down to finding the right questions to ask.
Hmm.
For me, I start from a position of being curious. I'm
Hmm.
When someone's talking to me, if I meet someone at a, you know, a confirmation. I had a confirmation on Saturday. My kids got confirmed. If I feel if I'm meeting a new person and they're talking to me about what they do, I'm asking questions. I want to hear more about what it is they do and what and why they're doing it and how happy they are to do it. Um, Possibly because of that introverted side of me where I don't
Right,
really, I don't feel like I don't want to be talking about myself as much. So the more
right.
questions I'm asking, the more less time I'm doing all the speaking.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that's just I've got to a point now where I've had so many good experiences by asking questions, being curious, digging. Um, that I want to do it over and over again. I think it's a great place to be. But I really I've noticed a lot that most people don't do that.
Right.
So if you want to start doing it, just start asking questions. Start listening to
Yes.
other people. Get curious about their life, and get used to not talking about your life so much.
Great advice, 100%. Yes, I always think of good questions and curiosity as a superpower, and I think superpowers can be built and strengthened, and so, yeah, great advice. So, well, I'd love to switch gears a little bit because you also what also piqued my interest and caused me to invite you to this interview was that we had a look at your own Clifton Strengths 34, and for the folks listening, this is an assessment developed by Don Clifton many years ago, and now offered to the public through the Gallup Corporation. Some 33 million plus people worldwide have taken this instrument, and it measures 34 different talent themes. And so Nick and I, we had the opportunity to look at your amazing talents. And again, it struck me as such a contrast with your initial education in chemistry and mathematics. And so what really struck me, and if you don't mind me sharing with the listeners, you had
Sure.
a number of what are called relationship building themes that bubbled up into your top 10. And I'll just read them off just for the folks listening. But your number one is positivity, which I picked up on that right away when we had our first conversation. Someone who brings a real positive, value and element to, tries to see the bright side and the half full approach. Number 2 is includer. So you have this really, and which I think is amazing probably for your workshops because you're probably really attentive to everybody in the group. So number 1 and 2, positivity and includer, both relationship building themes. Then you had number 4, which is adaptability. Also, really comfortable kind of changing course, which within a group of people sometimes, many times I imagine you have to do. Your number 5
Definitely.
is right, harmony. Wonder when that talent comes in effect when you're dealing with groups, I'm sure. And then number 6 is connectedness, and that's a little harder one to understand, but that means you have just a great sense of the connection between, people and groups and to a real global scale, how one thing impacts another. You seem to have a really great sense of that. And number 9, individualization, which they say folks high in individualization are great gift givers because they're always pay attention to what other people's motivations and needs and wants are. And then even your number 11, which is relator. So you had, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 relationship building themes in your top 11, which was amazing. Um, and so your number 1 and 2, again, back to those, which was positivity and includer, they say those can often be like breathing. You're not even conscious of them. So how have those relationship building themes, which you're just really have a superpower, how have those impacted you in your work with teams and groups? And how have you, since we've talked about the Clifton strengths, how have you found yourself tapping into those?
Well, I think it's a really interesting process to go through, by the way, Nancy. So thank you very much for that. It's yeah, I think it was. I think it's a fascinating set of results that came up for me. It
Mm-hmm.
kind of makes me feel like I'm in the right place. I'm doing what I should be
Mm,
doing because they seem to talk to the work I'm doing workshop bank and with all the amazing clients I have all over the world now, it feels like I'm in the right place because,
Yes.
well, at least Clifton thinks I'm in the right
Right.
place,
Agrees with
which
you.
is very nice. It's very
Yes.
reassuring, to be honest. Everyone has doubts about what they're doing, whether
Yep.
what they're doing is the right thing for them at any given moment. And this seems to be. I don't know whether Clifton strengths evolve over time. Maybe I'll maybe I'll lose these skills as I get older and grumpier. Who knows? Um, but yeah, I mean, a lot of those are core to the objectives I'm looking to help my clients achieve, and I'm looking to achieve myself. It's not you can't be in the workshop facilitation business
Mm.
without the well. It's very difficult to be authentic about solving issues when it comes to relationships or and teams if you don't have a natural tendency to want to do that yourself. I think I would get found out pretty quickly. So
Uncovered.
yeah, it's really interesting. I think my wife would say I'm a little bit too overly positive at times, but now I
Mhm.
have that as my number one. I can just come back to her and say, well, that's just the way
That's
I
who I
am,
am.
honey.
Exactly. Well, and you mentioned, that being genuine and authentic, and I think that is another thing that is kind of common now in leadership. It's like we want authentic leadership. We want to be authentic, and I imagine a lot of folks struggle with that one as well. And again, as particularly maybe if they don't have a lot of relationship building in their top talents. And
Yeah.
so, do you have any advice for folks who are trying to make sure they're more authentic and genuine? Because that's a tough one, I think. If it's not coming natural.
Yeah, if it's not coming natural to you, I think it is difficult, isn't it? It's
Mm-hmm.
difficult to. It might be a little bit difficult for me um, to give you a good
Mm-hmm.
answer on that. I mean, I know what I do, and
Mm-hmm.
that comes back to the listening again.
Yes.
If I want uh, to help someone, if I want to help a team, my own team move forward, I ask them what they need. Regular
Mm-hmm.
one-to-ones between leaders and their direct reports. It was an essential process for me when I was leading when I've been leading teams, and in those conversations again, it would be me asking questions and me listening to their answers. It was never me just giving them a speech. So if you want to be authentic to someone, then get good at listening to them,
Mm-hmm.
because that tells them that you really care about them.
Yes.
And I think that's where the seed of authenticity starts. You have to you have to give off the um, you have to give off the image that you care about them more than you care about
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
Um, so I think that's probably
Yeah.
where would start
Yeah.
when it comes to being authentic. But it
That's
is difficult, I
perfect.
can imagine,
Yes.
to be
Yeah. A bit of it.
authentic if you don't.
Yeah, yeah, and to tag on to what you say, I think that's so true, and it's a discipline, and you may not feel that authenticity at first, but I think once a person does invest the time into listening and trying to understand, and you mentioned earlier that curiosity, I think once a person does invest that time in another person, then you do start to care. Then the genuineness starts to maybe build, and so it's a building
Yeah,
block.
definitely.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't, then you probably shouldn't be a leader, and therefore look for another look
Exactly.
for another career.
100%. Yes, that might be an indicator. Very, very well said. Well, and interesting too, Nick, you do have several strategic thinking themes in your top 10, which again, that's how I kind of tied into your original career with the mathematics and the chemistry.
Yeah.
So those are futuristic. You have an eye towards the future. Learner, where you have a great need and desire to learn things. And then input, where you're often collecting data, information, resources and things like that. So that's where I maybe thought that might have impacted your earlier career in these types of analytical themes. So how do your strategic thinking themes kind of balance that relationship building in your workshops?
Um, yeah, I think the strategic thinking bits of me uh,
Hmm.
is where my entrepreneurial spirit seems to come from. I'm coming up with crazy ideas for new products, for new
Hmm.
companies all the time, and sometimes I reach out to them and tell them about it. Sometimes I don't. When it comes to workshops, though, I think you're always looking to redesign a future, a new future. There has to be some change that comes out of it. There also has to be ways of measuring whether that change has been successful as well, which is I'm always trying
Hmm.
to build into workshops as well. So you're going to know whether you've been successful once you've gone through a workshop or a series of workshops at some point in the future. So yeah, I think I'm always building in uh, that's why I steer away actually from anything that's just all about relationships and team building.
Hmm.
I'm none of the processes on workshopbank.com are are there only to improve relationships between the
Hmm.
people and the participants who are going to be involved in that workshop. There's always I improve relationships by creating change for that team or for that organization, some improved change, some positive change that, when they look back on the process, will by default improve the relationships within that team
Hmm.
because they've achieved something great together. And
Yeah.
I think that's a really important point to focus on. That, if you're running workshops just to improve team relationships,
Hmm.
then you're missing the opportunity to do bigger and greater things. And I think that's why lots of organizations don't do workshops, because maybe
Yes.
they've had one or two that have only done that and not
Ah,
gone on to
yes.
achieve those bigger and greater things. But yeah, I mean, I think workshops are there to improve the future. They're
Yes.
there to create some new future state that is better than the one they currently sit in today. And if it's not doing that, if it doesn't do that, then it hasn't been
Mhm.
done well.
Yes. Wow. You, I think really captured it, the essence of that. I think one of the things that it's very important to me as well that we have a way to measure this squishy human interactions and
Mm,
behavior change. The same thing, right? Because businesses are, we're not just doing this to feel good. We're doing this for a intention and a purpose. And if we're not
absolutely.
able to find some way to measure our progress, even if it's in human behavior, then it's not effective. And I was just thinking that's maybe
Absolutely.
that wonderful balance you have with the strategic thinking and the relationship building as well. And I can attest
Yeah.
your workshops very much so. I agree. That's why I love the workshops that you offer because they are very simple, clear, they get at the heart of the issue and you have, really clear, measurable ways to have outcomes. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
Absolutely. I think there has to be some kind of a cost benefit analysis done afterwards to justify that time, because workshops are expensive to run. You take
exactly.
20 people into a room for 2 hours, that's you add up their hourly wage. That is an
Hmm.
expensive session to run. So
Yes.
you better have a benefit that easily pays for that and more,
Yes.
that
Yes.
that you're able to measure later.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And when we talked about the Clifton Strengths, one of the principles that is really core to this whole instrument is it's really about um, mobilizing and utilizing our strengths. Gallup's done a years and years of research that says people are happier, more effective, more engaged. They stay longer in their workplace when they're actually given the opportunity to utilize their strengths every day. And so when we look at someone's Clifton Strengths, there is a natural tendency to want to go to number 34 and say, how do I fix that one? And really a large part of my job is trying to help folks see really it's about navigating around those. We can't change our basic wiring. So how did
Mm.
that knowledge that we're really in a better position when we maximize our strengths, how did that impact you?
I mean, yeah, it's a very positive way to look at it, isn't it? And
Mm,
having a ranking of 1 to 34, there has to be something down at number 34, number 33, or right down at the bottom. Something's
mhm,
going to be there, even if so.
right.
Even if you improve those things at the bottom, they'll be replaced by something else.
That's right.
So that there's no win if that's your objective. There is no win
Mhm,
in going through a process like that. So it's nice to be able to. I think it's nice to be able to just ignore, the bottom half and just say, right, okay,
mhm,
well that's where this process is saying that I get the least energy from, so therefore I can focus on focus on this top half, and that I guess that really leans into my positivity
mhm.
strength, because it's ignoring the negative and focusing on the positive.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a it's a great part of the process, I think.
yeah, awesome, awesome. Well, and as we wrap up, Nick, do you have any words of wisdom for anyone who wants to either improve their strengths or their skill in understanding others, to get more effective as a facilitator? Any last thoughts that you'd like to share?
Oh, that puts me on the spot.
Sorry. I know
No,
that's a hard, broad question.
it's a big one. I
Make
think
it good too.
yeah, okay.
No pressure.
um I think if you've never before facilitated a workshop, um l- do a bit of research about what it means to be a facilitator. And we talked before on calls how, for me, being a facilitator is very simple. You're in control of the process as a facilitator, and the participants are there in charge of the content. And neither role should ever cross the divide, the boundary between those two roles. Facilitators should never get involved in the content, and the people providing the ideas and the content as part of that process should never jump across the divide into the process. And That's really key to being a good facilitator. It's impossible to facilitate a workshop and contribute to it at the same time, because no one's ever really sure about what role you're. And if that dynamic intrigues you, do a little bit of research into what being a facilitator is. Can try and convince your boss, or if you are the boss, next meeting, take someone to the side and say, I'd like you to be a facilitator in this workshop. This is the process we're going to go through. You're in charge of this, we're in charge of the content, and see where it takes you. I have tons of free workshop resources, free workshop processes on workshopbank.com. So if you'd like to have a look at those, then I invite you to do so, and just give it a go and see where it takes you. May work for you.
Yes.
It probably will work for you, but it may not. But if it probably will.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome advice, Nick. And I can attest to like I said, the workshopbank.com. You've got so much great material. So I think that's a good resource for anyone looking to enhance their skills or at least get a better sense, as you say, about facilitation and what that might look like, or the process, even as you said many times.
Yeah,
You've got such a good structure to your workshops that I think what struck me the most is the simplicity of them,
yeah,
that and yet it gets at the heart of the issue really quickly and simply.
yeah,
So that's what I like.
yeah.
So
Simple is where I'm always leaning towards.
yeah, so your answer did not disappoint, so good job.
That's good.
But Nick, I was so excited to have you in this conversation, and you've just brought so many good nuggets to the table. So thank you for taking time out of your super busy schedule to invest with me here at the Open Gate Conversations. And I hope you have a fabulous day.
Thank you very much for having me, Nancy. Lovely
Thank
to see
you.
you again.
You as well.